Are you a foreign entrepreneur thinking of living here in the US? In this video, we're going to share with you some options. Coming up. Hi, this is Kai with the Kai Wong team, helping you better understand everything you need to know about New York City real estate. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Steve Maggi. He's the attorney from SMA Law Firm, an immigration attorney here in New York City. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Kai. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Steve. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an immigrant just like you. I came here when I was 5.
Okay.
And I decided to dedicate my professional life to helping other immigrants maneuver through this complex immigration system. Started this firm 15 years ago. We do all things immigration.
Okay.
And our chief focus is working with entrepreneurs and foreign companies that want to launch here in the US.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
It's a pleasure.
So, what we get asked a lot is there's a lot of successful business people in foreign countries that are looking to immigrate here. And a lot of them, they're not aware of what options they have available to them. They've only heard about like options like EB-5, right? So for an entrepreneur from a foreign country, are there other options available to them?
Absolutely. Like I said, the crux of our practice is working with foreign entrepreneurs. There are essentially two main paths. One is the E2 visa based on treaties with the US.
Okay.
And the other one is the L1. It's called the intra-company transfer visa.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about each one of them.
Okay. So the E2 is based on bilateral treaties that are signed between the US and the other member countries.
Okay.
Right now there are 80 E2 treaties in effect.
Wow.
First one was signed right after the War of 1812 with the UK in 1815.
Okay.
And the most recent one to go into effect on May 1st, just a few weeks ago, was the one with Israel.
Okay.
Essentially that allows people from those countries or holding passports from those countries to set up a US company and apply for up to a 5-year visa to run a US company, which creates jobs.
Okay. Great. And what about the L1 you were mentioning?
The L1 is essentially, we use it as a default many times for people who don't come from those E2 countries.
Okay.
And that's significant because you're talking about the majority of the world's population that does not qualify because none of the BRICS countries have a treaty. So that's Brazil, Russia, India, Indonesia, China, and South Africa.
Okay.
None of the nationals holding only those passports can qualify. So the workaround here is essentially to set up a foreign company. And after 1 year, if it's going successfully, you can launch a US subsidiary and then be transferred to the US to run US operations.
Okay, so besides setting up a foreign company, is there any difference in terms of the time frame it takes for applying through the E2 versus the L1, or cost or anything else that differentiates them?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of advantages. So like I said, our default essentially when we can is to apply for E2. And there's specific reasons for that. One is that their applications are filed at the US embassies and consulates, which are easier to get approved because they don't come under the mandate of our administration. They work independently.
Okay.
And their mandate is really to increase business between the country that they're in and the United States.
Got it.
The politics are different, so the chances of success are much higher. And for a lot of countries, you have a 5-year visa right from the start, so you can grow your company organically.
Got it.
The costs are also less because all you're paying for is essentially a visa interview fee.
Oh, okay.
And so the process is quicker and more efficient. It's also less expensive.
Got it.
L1 is used for defaults where E2 is not possible. Like for example, if you have a Dutch company that sets up an operation here, but they want to sponsor someone that's not Dutch.
Okay.
They don't qualify for E2. The nationality has to match the majority owner of the US company. So then they can send essentially any national from any of their branches from another country that have origins in another country to the US under L1. So sometimes you have companies that are using both.
So Steve, what happens with people with dual citizenship, right? For example, if they're citizens to a country that falls in the E2 category and also L1 category, what happens at that point?
Okay, so if they fall into an E2, essentially they can use any of their passports to qualify.
Okay.
So you have Chinese nationals who don't have E2 treaties, but that obtain citizenship from Grenada, which is something that's been happening pretty extensively the past few years.
Okay.
Since Grenada has a treaty, those Chinese nationals are treated as nationals of Grenada for the purposes of their petitions.
Okay.
And can get 5-year visas, so they don't have to wait with all the backlogs that they have with other potential visa categories.
Okay.
L1 has no nationality requirements. So you could literally, if you have a multinational company in Sri Lanka or in San Marino or in the smallest island, smallest country on the planet, as long as you have a legitimate functioning business and you're expanding and have the resources to expand to the US, you could use the L1 to transfer employees to the US.
So quick question with that example with the the Chinese foreign national that has dual citizenship in Grenada, right? Do they have to have a business operating in Grenada at that time or in China?
No, because that's a great question. One of the differentiators between E2 and L1 is there's no requirement for E2 to have a foreign business. That's why it's also called the startup visa.
Nice.
You can literally just have a concept or capital. You can even invest in an existing franchise. As long as you set up a US entity and you fund it properly, then you can apply for E2 as long as you have a passport from an E2 country.
For the potential viewer that's looking at the video, how can they find out if their country falls under the E2 or L1? Do they need to speak to an immigration attorney to reconfirm that?
Well, like I said, for L1, there's no nationality requirements, but you have to have an existing foreign entity that has existed for at least 1 year.
Okay.
The individual has to have worked for that company as a manager or executive for at least 1 year, and then it has to be properly funded in order to create the U.S. entity. The U.S. entity has to be created in both cases in order to be able to sponsor the visa petition.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing that information. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the viewers?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that this is a country that still supports entrepreneurs, and that no matter what country you're from, you can live your dream of setting up a U.S. company and launching your startup here.
Okay.
It's just a question of which path you take and how much time and money you have to invest.
So you're saying the U.S. is still open for business?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your information. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kai.
And thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, consider subscribing. On this channel, we share with you buying and selling tips, market updates, and neighborhood guides. If there's any questions that you have or comments with regards to this video or something you want us to cover in a future video, please leave it in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.